Okay, I'm going to call the August the 10th, 2022 meeting of the Ascension Parish Planning Commission to order. We're at 607 East Worthy Road, Gonzales, Louisiana, in the council chambers. Let's have a roll call of members, please. Mr. Vila?
Mark Villa, President. Nicholas Miller.
Max Nasser, President.
Wade Scheck-Snyder, President.
Randy Kluwat, President.
Tom Barnum, President.
Okay, Mr. Vila, would you do the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Be glad to. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is introduction of staff, so I'll ask the staff to please introduce themselves.
Stacy Webb, Recording Secretary for the Planning Commission.
Spencer Long, Parish Attorney.
Jerry Iscari, IT.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
Lance Brock, Zoning Official.
Okay, thank you all. Chairman's comments. Chairman has no comments. Public comment on any agenda item. If there are members of the public that have any comment on any agenda item, please come to the podium. Introduce yourself, address, and which item you'd like to speak on. No comments. Staff report, Mr. Fournier.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the first item under the staff report was a presentation by our consultant, Kindred Keys Collaborative. We're going to postpone that until the next meeting, okay? We've been working back and forth with the Kindred Keys consultants on the ordinance revisions, and we have asked them to make some modifications to what they presented so far. So we're going to ask them to give that presentation at the September meeting, okay? Thank you.
Okay.
And I will work into number B, if that's okay with you?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah. Under the subdivision, you have the matrix that's prepared by Mr. Poche, who's unfortunately not able to make it tonight. We have two projects that have started since we last talked to you. The first is the Belle Maison project on William Ficklin Road. The second is Delon Estates on Highway 73. Both those have started construction, or at least they're mobilizing to start construction. The third project I'd like to mention, though, is the one at the very bottom, Windermere Crossing. One of the conditions on that project was that they widen Cannon Road from its current 17 feet to 20 feet. That project is in construction right now. We're looking for it to be completed within the next 3 to 4, maybe 5 weeks, okay? So we're going to have a nice road, 20 feet in width, from Roddy all the way to Burnside, all right, for a distance of about a mile, all right? So I'm available to answer any questions you might have. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Fournier. Any questions for Mr. Fournier? Okay, thank you. Next item would be engineering staff report. Is there an engineering report?
There is none tonight. Right.
No engineering report. Next item would be minutes. Do I have a motion or comment on the minutes of the previous meeting?
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Mr. Scheck-Snyder.
Second.
Second by Mr. Vila. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda. Next item is affidavit of mortgage declaration, DB Windsor LLC, creation of 94 lots, major subdivision, final plat, 17138 Blue Ridge Road, Prairieville. Item B, affidavit of mortgage declaration, Gray Brothers Investments, lots 12B, 1A, and 12B2 in Forest Oaks subdivision. This is a first filing, 15388 and 15394 Forest Oak Road in Prairieville. Item C is affidavit of mortgage declaration, Jody R. Sheets and Cade A. Sheets, Lot Z, 17208 Highway 44, Prairieville, Louisiana. Item D is affidavit of mortgage declaration, Dane Sutton, Lot 7A1, 9468 Split Log Road, Santa Monica, Louisiana. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve of Mr. Scheck-Snyder.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kluat. Any discussion? Those in favor signify by aye. Any opposition? No opposition. That's unanimous. We will have now, next item, public hearing to approve or deny the following family petitions. The first item is Betty B. Arrington property, lots 7Z1 and 7Z2, BEI Surveying LLC. It's in Council District 5. Anyone to speak on this item? Sir, please state your name and your address.
My name is Seth Mosby. I'm the surveyor who prepared this plat for this family partition. My address is 16709 Amy Lane, French Settlement, 70733. And I was here to answer any questions y'all may have about this family partition.
Do we have any questions from the commission? Do we have any discussion, a motion?
No, you want to open a public hearing just
Well,
in case.
this is public hearing.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry. Anyone else like to speak in favor or in opposition to this particular item, family petition? Okay, now, do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Kluat to approve, and second by Mr. Venato. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, item B has been removed from the agenda prior to the meeting pending additional information, documentation from the applicant. Next item is Roy Sutton property, lots 7A, 2A, and 8A, 2B, Earls and Associates, LLC, Council District 2, and I have to assume that you're here to speak on this item.
Yes, sir. James Falgood with Earls and Associates, representing the Sutton family on the following family partition.
Could you give us your address, please?
What's that?
Address, please?
2102 South Southland Avenue, Gonzales, Louisiana.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Representing Earls and Associates and the Sutton family on the following family partition. Asking the commission for approval.
Do we have any questions? Do we have any other comment? Public comment? Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Venato. Do we have
Second.
a second by Mr. Schexnayder? Any discussion by the commission? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is item 12, ordinance, public hearing to recommend approval or denial to the parish council, amendments to the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code. Mr. Fournier, please.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this item, this wetland ordinance was basically approved not long ago with our first batch of ordinance changes that appeared before the Planning Commission earlier in the year. Went to council, it was approved. Once it was approved, we noticed that there were a couple of things that were a little bit askew with the ordinance, and we are bringing this forward to you to correct tonight and recommend this go to the full council. What's happening is that right now we are asking for a property owner or developer to acquire a U.S. Corps of Engineers jurisdictional determination on wetlands when they submit the preliminary plat. Typically what happens is that the developer will hire a consultant to identify those wetlands, and then the engineer will design around that wetland area, right? And then once we file the final plat, we require them to have a jurisdictional determination from the Corps of Engineers. Those usually take about a year, right, to get anywhere from 8 to 12 to 15 months in some cases, all right? So instead of delaying that process, what we'd like to do is continue what we did in the past and have a determination outlined by the consultant. These people are professionals. They go out there, they know what wetlands are, and they make that determination. that determination is outlined on the preliminary plat and the engineer designs around those wetland areas, right? So what we'd like to do is revert back to that system where we have the consultant outline the wetlands areas on the preliminary plat, and we require the jurisdictional determination from the Corps of Engineers when the final plat is approved, all right? The second thing on here is that we just made a couple of clerical errors when we wrote the ordinance. In the word 40, it was approved at 40% of wetlands, and we kept the word 15 in there, so we're just making some clerical changes on this, all right? So I'm available to discuss this at length if you'd like, all right? So.
Do we have any questions from Mr. Fournier before the public hearing?
Yeah.
Mr. Miller, go ahead.
So, is it just some of the housekeeping and then the, I guess the delay until the final plat? That is an actual ordinance change. That's not just correcting some wording, correct?
Right, yes.
Okay. Previously, before this new ordinance came out, was it that way before?
Yes, it was.
And then some kind of way it got changed
Yeah,
to
it got changed.
preliminary
When-
plat during
When
the...
we got the wording in there, it changed. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
But before this ordinance, it was
Well,
final
let-
plat?
let me-
Or
let
was it
me-
always at preliminary plat, and now we're
Yeah.
requesting a
let me
change to final?
Let me preface this by saying that in the past, in the old ordinance, we never had a wetlands preservation portion of the ordinance. This is new. So when we put that in, it basically changed how, the timing of when we're outlining the, or asking for the wetlands determination from the Corps, right? So in the past, we didn't have an ordinance preserving wetlands. Now we do, all right? So what we're saying now is that when we ask for the JD, it's called the J jurisdictional determination, we're asking for it, again, to be at the final plat. And we always did it that way, all right?
Okay.
So-
Yeah, that was my, is this a new baby, or is this
So
something
we're-
we've had in the past that we've got some experience with that we can
Yeah.
look back to if we have questions?
Yeah, and we have typically not had any issues with a consultant outlining wetlands and then having that change when it got to the Corps. These people know what they do. They contact the Corps all the time. You know, they're in contact with them.
Do we have a preferred vendors list of those environmental groups that do this work?
We don't hire the vendor. The developer does, right?
Okay.
But there are, you know, approved people who do this. They're professionals in their field, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be the, an option as far as still requiring it to be on the preliminary plat and perhaps granting a waiver to them to delay it some time in order for the Corps of Engineers to complete their work, and also not be a burden to the developer in the project? Is that an option to where we could grant them a waiver that, you know, give us a specifications of your scope of work? If, you know, if you think that Corps is going to be delayed for the next 3 months or 4 months, what do you intend to carry out during this next 3 months of work where, you know, we don't lose oversight of what's going on in the project, but we still, you know, they're not burdened with not being able to proceed? Is a waiver an option there?
I'm not sure how that could work, quite honestly, because typically what happens is that we'll go through the preliminary plat procedure of looking it over, making sure everything's okay. Then it comes to you as a commission for approval. And at that approval stage, we have the outline, the wetlands outlined on that preliminary plat by that consultant. And I would like to continue using that process, but I don't know how a waiver would work if we have already approved the preliminary plat. You know, so that would be a timing issue. I think that we might have some issues with, or then in fact they would very likely have some. Right?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of skipping steps in a procedure, you know, in that process. You know, granted, the Corps of Engineers has to give their blessing on a wetlands project.
They do.
And I feel like, you know, with the timing of FEMA still having to do their job and, you know, the environmental groups still doing, I feel like, you know, everybody working simultaneously, that timeline, I don't feel it would be that full 12 months. It would likely, you know, maybe a 1 or 2 month delay there.
Yeah.
You know, but is it that big of a gap between everyone else doing their job and the Corps of Engineers doing their and signing off on it? before this project can actually be seen through.
Well, typically what happens is that once the preliminary plat's been approved and you've had that outline on it by the consultant, they will then submit to the Corps of Engineers for the wetlands determination. And that's what triggers the clock from the Corps. And it's up to them as to when they're going to approve it, so.
Does the Corps quite often follow the recommendations and the work of the consultants there? Is it usually hand in hand, or are they?
From what we've seen, 99% of the time, they typically do. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
If there are any major changes, though, we're saying that the developer is going to be on the hook for that.
Absolutely.
You're essentially rolling the dice and hoping that
that's on them.
that the Corps of Engineer calls their numbers and it pays out, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
No further questions?
Nothing for me.
Any further questions from the commission? For Mr. Fournier?
Jerome, my question was, and I just want this a little clarified, is part one and I'll just kind of briefly go in, may be used for primary road and utility crossings with proper road and cross drains provided, and for other parish-approved uses in an amount not to exceed 40% of the designated wetlands acreage shown on the wetlands determination. That 40 percentile, what drove that number? Where did we come up with that?
That was the council change.
Originally, when we proposed the wetland ordinance, we had it at 15%, right? So a lot of this language basically, quite frankly, came from an ordinance, a similar ordinance that was in Tangipahoa Parish. And we looked at them, they hired the consultant. So we initially recommended 15% of the wetlands being utilized for those purposes. So it means that 85% would have to be preserved. When it got to the council changed it to 40%.
Okay. Was that an arbitrary number, or did we have some data saying that 40% was really what we needed, or 60% mitigation instead of an 85%? Did we have some numbers to back up that change?
The planning department was not privy to that decision. Okay. That was strictly the council that made the decision.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not as strong of a fan of reducing it. I was happier with it closer to that 15% instead of the 40%. So that's one of the few things I had issues with. That was my question.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Miller, one more question, please.
It was Mr. Compton that recommended that we stay at that 15%, and they changed it to the 40% anyway, correct?
Yes.
Was that his comment?
Mr. Compton was in agreement that it should stay at 15%.
And now we're trying to.
But the council basically changed the 40.
Right. And now we're trying to, skip over the process even further and say, well, now we're just going to go ahead and not only are we going to build more, we're going to do it even faster before everything is signed off on.
Yeah. Well,
not a lot of mitigation there.
In our I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
In our recommendation of this ordinance, can we potentially make that reverse change and modify that?
You are making a recommendation to the council.
Okay.
So
that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just say that one of the issues I have at this point is this change. The ordinance is being presented to us on our agenda, and really, speaking for me personally, no one has come to me and had any discussion whatsoever about this, the rationale for it, why we would be doing this. As Mr. Scheck-Snyder asked, was the data. We don't have any of that. I'm not saying that it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. Certainly, we all support our wetlands and our environment. Correct. That's only a comment I'm making, and I guess what I'm saying is that when these types of things come to us for a recommendation, for approval or denial, I would like to have conversations and communications with those individuals that are either for it or against it prior to the meeting, so I can make a more informed decision. And I would hope that would be the same for the other commissioners. But, those are my comments. Do we have any other comments before we enter into the public hearing?
I second your comment, to be honest.
Okay, thank you.
Data is necessary, and we have none really.
Okay, so this is a public hearing to recommend approval or denial to the parish council amendments to the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code. Item A, ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17-506.2A, Wetland Preservation, major residential and commercial subdivisions exceeding 20 acres or 50 lots. Do we have any public comment? And what's the time limit on the public comment?
3 minutes.
Okay, ma'am, I want to advise you that by the commission bylaws, you're allowed 3 minutes
That's
to
fine.
comment, and please let us share your name and address. We'd
Hey,
like to have
Polly
that.
Glover, 38384 Welsh Drive, Prairieville, wetlands advocate. So
Okay,
first,
Ms. Glover, let me say that, I mentioned you'll have 3 minutes, but of course, if there are questions that come to you from the commission or whatever, we'll take that into consideration as we consider your 3 minutes.
I'll do my best. Let me first, I'll tell you, thank you so much for allowing me to speak, okay? And just a vast background on me, 30 years of advocacy for our wetlands. What brought us here today was recognizing that we had a rather serious issue with the flooding that, from various issues with zoning and different changes. At any rate, in discussion with, the public, local elected officials, Jerome, Lance, and all of them, we recognized that Louisiana was having a statewide issue, and now the issue with the wetlands were here in our parish. Ascension Parish has roughly 82,000 acres of undeveloped wetlands. Of that, we have about 7,000 and change of herbaceous wetlands as designated by the 2019 land base. So here we are, and the parish has got rapid growth and development, as you all are aware of. We've kind of changed our landscape, and the wetlands to the south in the southern part of the parish are heavily degraded, as you all may or may not be aware of. So if you look at the Maurepas Basin, and you look at their capacity to retain water, I've got it here. I'll show you a little demographic that kind of says why we need the wetlands, actually. It's pretty clear, the graphic that I'm going to show you. Do we have something we can pull? Is there a way to pull it up? Right here? Is that going to show y'all? Can y'all? Let's see, what do I need to do?
Turn it on at the bottom left.
Oh, over here. Is that it? Can y'all see that?
I hope
No?
he's running your timer, because I'm not.
Yeah. You take a second, because I'm not sure what I'm doing. Okay, can y'all see that?
Somebody needs to.
So there's our, I don't know if y'all can see that or not. Yeah. So there's our flood risk exposure.
Ms. Glover, you have a minute
Okay.
remaining, just this
So that's okay.
information.
So look, there's Ascension Parish. Y'all should see it pretty much in the red, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So that gives you a little idea of the need to preserve the wetlands, because we need them for retention and capacity. But probably the diagram that shows it the most, well, I think I've got it here, is where 1 acre of wetlands offsets about 1.5 million gallons of water. So anything we can do to protect them. As far as development in the wetlands, I think it can be done. We just need to change our codes and ordinances and look at more pervious materials, go into more of like what we do in the coastal zone, which is pier and beam or pier and tiling, whatever you want to do. I'm not an expert in it, but I can tell you right now, Ascension's got a problem with the wetlands. We need to do what we can to work with the protection. As far as the percentages, if you ask me, and you ask most of my coastal peers, they would tell you no development in the wetlands. So a sacrifice, I see you smiling, Mr. Miller. So a sacrifice or an arbitrary number is 15%. But we need to be proactive in addressing it and not reactive in working with the developer.
I want
Answer any questions.
to ask you a question, and I'm asking this question for informational purposes. I'm not asking this question because I'm trying to either diminish or elevate, your comments.
If I can answer it.
Yeah. You've been an advocate, you mentioned, for many years.
Yeah.
Do you work professionally in that field, or are you
An advocate.
an advocate? Okay.
And I work with the stakeholders. I actually have served on the board of directors of the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana for a long time.
Familiar with them, yes, ma'am.
The state's largest and oldest wetlands advocacy group. I served on their executive board for years till I was term limited. And I'm presently serving on CCA's board, and will certainly be, working with them. But outside of that, I do restorations probably across the state. Probably have restored and planted more trees and plants than any other citizen in the state.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from Ms. Glover?
No, ma'am.
Anyone?
Thank you for your presentation.
What's that?
I said, thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
Well, and I'm happy, y'all can give out my number, you can call me anytime. Can't say that I'll always get right back to you, because we're kind of all over the place right now with some other wetlands issues that we're dealing with, and I'm not paid to do it, so I do it because I care. So thank you all. If you have any questions, just let me know, reach out to me.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we have no questions. Do we have any other, thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Do we have any other public comment? Okay, public hearing is closed. Do we have any motion from the commission?
Well, I mainly have just a question, and Mr. Fournier, if you don't mind. I really would like to see a little bit more data, if at all possible, if we can somehow get some of this data. That changed from 15 to 40. I understand it was done at the council level, but if we're going to be making a recommendation, that's something that I want to find out. Do we have some data to back up that change? Is it necessary? And is it, are we being too arduous at 15%? Or are we being too lenient at 40%? I think that it's something that if we have a little bit extra data on how many acres this takes out of development or increases into development, something along those lines, if we can have something like that, that helps us make a better decision on that specific point. And, I don't want to stop anybody else from having this discussion, but if we can, either ask that this come back to us either next month or so, whenever some more data is driven, then I think we can make a better informed decision.
Okay, so, 15 to 40 is a significant change. Do we have any other comment?
I would ask, with that data, would one of those consultants, environmental consultants, be available to come and make a presentation to us that tell us exactly what it is that they're trying to do with this and how they work with the Corps of Engineers on making these determinations?
I'll reach out to some that I know, and we can ask if they will appear, right?
Okay.
Yeah, this wetlands determination is pretty standard practice, frankly, in the industry that I'm familiar with. A lot of the wetlands are already designated in the National Wetlands Inventory, and as Mr. Fournier said, there are many firms that do this type of work consistently. In fact, it's their entire practice. So there may be someone, either a wetlands consultant or the parish's wetland professional, that could make a presentation to the commission and discuss that 15 to 40% or whatever other questions you might have.
I had one other question that I was going to ask about that. Aren't the majority of these wetlands already determined? You're basically just asking the Corps of Engineers to come and review a map that they already have and say, yes, okay, we know where the lines are. Is that 12-month delay really going to be that 12 months? I can't imagine that it would be. And so I see as causing that delay for us, from going from the preliminary plat to the final plat.
There have been
Possibly irrelevant,
some
not necessarily.
rather general studies, on vacant property in the parish that shows wetlands.
Yeah.
But when you get into a development, they want to be very specific on that particular piece of property.
Okay.
So that's why they have the determinations and get out there and walk the land and actually map where the wetlands are, right? So, from what you've seen in these large, real small-scale maps that cover a large area, it's somewhat generalized, and they use the evaluations from aerial photographs and other determinations. But when it gets to a property that's, 50 acres in size, they want to get very specific and outline those areas, all right? So that's where this comes into play.
And 8 months to a year is not unusual.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Well, in that case, I'd like to make a motion that we table this till next, or we ask y'all to come back next month, perhaps give us a little bit more data on this 15 to 40 percentile change. And if there's anything else that has changed over this time, like for instance, this development's exceeding 20 acres in size or exceeding 50 lots. Do we have some determination why those numbers were chosen as well? So if we have something outlining that and maybe giving us a little bit more information, I think we can make a better decision and make a better recommendation to the council.
Okay, so time out. First of all, I'd like to request that you change your motion from tabling it to deferring it till the
Deferring
next
it,
meeting.
yes.
And before we go too far along with discussion, I'd like to have a second. Do we have a second we have a second from Mr. Vernado. Now, do we have discussion on Mr. Scheck's motion to defer until the next meeting?
I have one question.
Wait, time out.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd just like to say that the school board just come, I think it was Board of Adjustments about a week ago. And just the whole idea of, I'd kind of like a breakdown of what it's actually going to affect. If it's going to be a year, if it's some kind of financial hardship like anything else, as to why we would need to do this. Because certainly individuals, when they're developing, building houses, there's really no discussion on that issue. It's either you have the money or you don't, or you have the time to do it or the money or you don't. So I just don't think they denied it at the Board of Adjustments to go from dustless parking. They was trying to put some type of gravel, if I remember right, and it was denied. So I just don't think that's the way we should be thinking as far as timing and money, because individuals certainly can't think that way. When they're building, either they have it or they don't. So that's my only concern.
Okay, any further discussion, Mr. Miller?
Well, I think I'm going to make a secondary motion and motion to deny the modification.
Well, before we do that, let's discuss Mr. Scheck's motion and
To
take
defer.
action on that before you make
Are we
a
required to-
substitute motion.
Okay. Are we required to approve or deny today, or can we defer it?
We're not required to approve this today. We can defer this to the next meeting if we'd like, or if Mr. Scheck's motion fails, then we could accept your motion. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
We have a motion to defer on the floor that needs to be taken before we handle any other motions.
I'll rescind my second.
Okay, so we have Mr. Vernado rescinded his second for Mr. Scheck's motion. Would you like to make an alternate motion to?
I just think that I really just think that we need to before we pass this or deny this, we need to really revisit it. I definitely respect if we want to have a denial of recommendation, at that point, I'm not sure what does it solve. So I don't necessarily disagree, but I want to understand what we would be accomplishing.
Okay, so let me kind of
And
bring
what
this
does
back
that
to where I
accomplish at
think
that
it has
point?
to be, and that is that you do not have a second for your motion.
That
Do we
motion
have
fails.
do we have a motion?
I've got a motion to deny the modification.
We have the motion to deny the modification from Mr. Miller. Do we have a second to that motion? Okay?
Commissioners,
Yes,
I think we need to
please.
specify it's a motion to recommend denial.
Yes, exactly, I'm sorry.
We don't, that's all we're doing here today.
I
Thank you.
always forget that.
Thank you.
There would be a motion to recommend to the council that
Well, then that
we
doesn't give us the
deny
option
this.
to get any further information at that point, huh?
I have
No,
a comment
we
on
have to
that. Would-
defer it.
Do you have a second?
There was no second. So we had two motions that were made. So we had a motion to recommend to the council denial, which died for a lack of a second. We had a motion to defer this item to our next meeting, which would give us time to have conversation, but the second was withdrawn. So currently, we have no motion on the floor.
So,
I agree with
Defer.
Commissioner Shakespeare. I mean, I don't think recommending the denial is going to solve anything. I think if we make a recommendation that this comes back to us next month or the month after, so that there's some more discussion on this and get some more information on the change to the, Jerome, was the 40%, is that wasn't that already voted on by the council?
It was.
So we're
And it's-
not- we
And it's
can't
approved at 40%. All we were trying to do here was
Right, so
show
we can't
that
change the 40%.
You
No, we-
cannot.
No, right.
You can recommend that it be changed, but you
Correct.
cannot change it. Right.
We're only really voting on from preliminary to final.
Well, that's a recommendation
The
as well.
recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Yes.
And that is?
I make a motion that we not table it, but defer this to the next month to get more information from Jerome and
Okay, do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
So we have the motion is to defer this item to the next meeting, and by that time, we anticipate having some additional information. So we have a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Schexnayder, second by Mr. Motion by Mr. Kluwat, second by Mr. Schexnayder. Is there discussion? I'm
The
sorry.
only thing I want to say, we can make another recommendation to go back to 15%. You're saying,
We can.
and that the point of your motion is to get some more data around that.
And
Okay,
we will
so-
consider this item at our next meeting.
Exactly. So as long as we get the data and we have the ability to make the recommendation back to council,
Right.
I'm good with that.
We can make whatever recommendation we want.
I didn't know if we could change it since they already approved it.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask, if you could, in your motion, be specific as to what kind of information you're asking us to gather and bring back to you at the next meeting, the staff would appreciate that, right?
Well, what do we care what the staff thinks? No, do we have, I'm sorry, would someone like to further discuss that and advise on what information they'd like to see from the staff?
Data that supports 40%, their decision to go to 40.
And you know I was only joking when I said that, I hope, okay?
I would like to see some type of, we're speaking of a timing issue, everybody's speaking of a timing issue, so I would certainly like to see something as far as why that is. I mean, we're hearing that it's a year, 8 months anyway, so that's to be expected if you're a developer anyway, so I'm just curious as to some type of more information on that.
Okay.
So, Mr.
That type
Fournier, I
of
think-
hardship is what it sounds like, so I mean,
I think what we would like to see is some sort of documentation or technical information that's indicative of why this should be changed from 15 to 40.
Okay.
And I believe it would also be helpful to this commission if we could have some data that demonstrates what a normal time period is for these wetlands activities.
Okay.
8 months, a year, 3 months, or whatever.
Okay.
That may help some of the commissioners make a decision.
Yeah, I concur. I would like some kind of information from the environmentalists that work, either some of those consultants or the Corps of Engineers that,
Okay.
what is involved with that and why it would be necessary to wait that long.
Okay.
Why
But
can't we-
I would request that come from rather than a consulting firm who may have their own opinions of how this should go. I'd rather have it come from parish staff,
Okay. All right.
that presentation.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any further discussion on Mr. Kluat's motion, which is to defer consideration of this item until the next meeting? Any further discussion? Okay, let's cast our votes. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposition. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It was a tie. I'll give it to Mr. Schexnayder, motion to adjourn, second by Mr. Kluat. Anyone opposed?